Close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath. Feel the room around you grow softer, quieter, almost as if the world itself is settling down for sleep. Tonight, I'll take you on a journey. A journey not through cities and highways, but through the mysterious landscapes of sound, memory, and imagination. Tonight's story is about a woman who discovered the music hidden between words, the poetry that lives in silence, and the power of a voice that can carry us beyond language itself. Her name is Meredith Monk, and her world is unlike any other. This is the story of Monk in Pieces. Imagine a stage, dimly lit, where one figure stands alone. She is small, unassuming, almost fragile-looking. But when she opens her mouth, the air trembles. Out comes not just a note, not just a melody, but something more primal, something ancient, something that makes you feel as if you've been transported to another time, another place. This is Meredith Monk's gift, the ability to reach into the deepest corners of human emotion and bring forth sounds that bypass the intellect and go straight to the soul. But let us step back. Before she became an icon of avant-garde music and performance, Meredith was simply a young girl with a restless imagination. She was born in New York City in 1942 into a world that was noisy, vibrant, and endlessly shifting. The city itself was like a living organism. Taxis honking, children playing in crowded streets, radios humming in tiny apartments stacked on top of each other. And inside that vast urban orchestra was Meredith, a child already tuned to hear the music in everything. Her family carried music in their bones. Her mother, Audrey, was a professional singer. Her grandfather had been a cantor in a synagogue, carrying sacred melodies through the air of prayer halls. So, music wasn't just entertainment in the Monk household, it was something deeper, a kind of inheritance, something passed from one generation to the next. Meredith, however, didn't simply want to sing like others. From an early age, she sensed that her voice wasn't limited to the neat lines of traditional songs. She discovered she could bend it, stretch it, twist it into new forms. She could make her voice tremble like wind against glass, or ripple like water in a stream, or rise like a bird startled into flight. For her, the human voice wasn't just for words, it was an instrument, as vast and versatile as the piano or the violin. Yet, being different often comes with a price. In her teenage years, she didn't quite fit in. While others were chasing pop songs and school dances, Meredith was wandering into soundscapes of her own creation. She would hum strange melodies, inventing syllables that meant nothing yet somehow conveyed everything. To many, it might have seemed odd. But Meredith was already touching something timeless, something even she couldn't fully explain yet. When she grew older, she studied formally at Sarah Lawrence College. There, she began to shape her instincts into discipline. She learned about composition, about performance, about how movement and sound could come together in ways that were radical for their time. And slowly, the world of avant-garde art, experimental, daring, unconventional, opened its doors to her. It was the 1960s after all. The air was thick with change. Artists, musicians, and dancers were all searching for new languages of expression. Meredith Monk found herself right at the heart of this revolution. But let us pause here. Imagine her in that moment, a young woman standing in a rehearsal studio, walls lined with mirrors, the faint smell of wood floors polished with sweat and dust. She closes her eyes, takes a deep breath, and begins to sing, not words, but pure sound. A sound that seems to come from somewhere deeper than her lungs, somewhere older than her body. The few who hear it are astonished. Some are unsettled, others are enchanted. And in that moment, Meredith knows she has found her path. Her early works were daring. She began to blend music with theater, voice with movement. To watch her was to witness not just a concert, but a living artwork, gestures, costumes, lights, and sound weaving together into something impossible to categorize. Critics at first didn't know what to make of it. Was it opera? Was it dance? Was it theater? The truth is, it was all of these and none of them. It was Meredith Monk's universe, and those who stepped into it often found themselves changed. And yet, her life was not simply about applause or recognition. Like every artist, she faced rejection, misunderstanding, and the constant battle to prove that her way of creating was worthy of being heard. She performed in small venues, in lofts, in experimental spaces where the seats were few and the resources scarce. But what she lacked in grand stages, she made up for with pure, unshakable conviction. She believed in the power of the voice, the power of sound to heal, to connect, to transcend. And so, she kept going. There is something profoundly bedtime-like about her art. Listen closely to some of her compositions, and you'll find yourself drifting, not because they lull you into sleep, but because they carry you into a dreamlike state, where logic loosens its grip and imagination takes over. Voices loop, echo, overlap, and suddenly you feel as though you are inside a cathedral of sound, where every note is a doorway. And tonight, as you rest, this story will be your doorway Jew. The story of Meredith Monk is not just about an artist, but about the courage to live differently, to sing differently, to see the world not for what it demands, but for what it could be. So, let us walk slowly through her life, piece by piece, like following a trail of music through the dark. Each step will take us deeper into her creations, her struggles, her triumphs, and the quiet wisdom she has gathered over decades of making art that refuses to be contained. This is only the beginning. When Meredith Monk began to step into the world as a young artist, she wasn't trying to shock anyone. She wasn't trying to be rebellious for the sake of rebellion. What she wanted, more than anything, was to be honest with the sounds inside her, to let them out, raw and unfiltered, even if they didn't sound like the polished music people were used to. Picture her in the mid-1960s, in New York City, a time when the air smelled of cigarette smoke and fresh rebellion. Painters were splashing canvases with colors that broke all the rules. Dancers were stripping away classical form, searching for pure movement. And in small, dim lofts and underground theaters, strange new performances were happening that confused some but thrilled others. This was Meredith's environment, and she was about to leave her mark on it. Her earliest works were unlike anything audiences had seen. In 1966, she created a piece called Ed 16mm. Earrings. Even the title felt unusual, mysterious. It wasn't just a concert, and it wasn't just a dance. It was something in between. On stage, she blended film, recorded sound, live singing, and physical gestures, until the boundaries between art forms seemed to dissolve. Those who witnessed it often left unsure of what exactly they had seen, but they knew they had experienced something alive, something powerful. Meredith was not afraid of silence. She was not afraid of odd sounds, of voices breaking, cracking, trembling. Where most singers tried to polish their voices into perfection, Meredith leaned into imperfection. She found beauty in the cracks, in the breath, in the tremor that revealed something more human than flawless notes ever could. This was radical. Imagine sitting in a theater, waiting for a traditional song to begin, and instead hearing a woman sing in wordless syllables, rising, falling, circling back on themselves, sometimes like laughter, sometimes like weeping, sometimes like wind sweeping across an empty landscape. At first, it might feel confusing, but slowly, as the sound continues, something happens inside you. You stop asking for meaning in the usual way, and you start to feel. You feel emotions you can't quite name, memories you can't fully place. That is the spell of Meredith Monk. As her career grew, she kept breaking boundaries. She formed her own ensemble, a group of singers and performers who were willing to explore sound the way she did. Together, they created works that were both delicate and explosive. In Education of the Girl Child, 1972, she embodied an old woman moving backward through time, gradually becoming younger until she reached childhood. It was haunting, tender, and unforgettable. The piece reminded audiences that art could tell stories without words, that the body and the voice together could reveal truths that language sometimes hides. Through the 1970s and 80s, her reputation spread. She began to travel, bringing her unique performances to audiences around the world. Some were amazed, some were unsettled, but almost no one left unmoved. She was proving that the human voice was more than a carrier of lyrics. It was an instrument of transformation. But beyond her artistic achievements, there was something deeply personal about her work. Meredith was always searching, always peeling back the layers of what it meant to be human. She once described her art as archaic future, a strange phrase, yet one that captures her essence perfectly. Her music felt both ancient, as if it carried the echoes of forgotten rituals, and futuristic, as if it pointed toward a new way of being. And it wasn't only about the sound. Watching her perform was like stepping into a dream. The way she moved, sometimes slowly, sometimes with sharp precision, was as much a part of the experience as her voice. She could stand completely still and sing a single trembling note that seemed to open a doorway inside you. Or she could leap, twist, spin, and suddenly her body was a part of the rhythm itself. Even now, if you listen to her recordings in the quiet of night, you'll notice how they feel both intimate and vast. A single voice can sound like an entire landscape. A single breath can hold the weight of silence. That's why her music is so perfect for bedtime listening. It doesn't demand your attention with noise or drama. Instead, it invites you gently into another world, one where sound becomes dream and dream becomes sound. But Meredith's journey was not always smooth. Many times, she faced doubt, her own and others. The mainstream world of classical music often didn't know what to do with her. She didn't fit into the neat categories of opera, or symphony, or pop. She was too experimental for some, too emotional for others. But instead of bending herself to fit those boxes, she kept carving her own path. That stubborn courage, that quiet refusal to compromise, became one of her greatest strengths. Slowly, recognition began to come. Awards, grants, fellowships, they trickled in as people began to understand the depth of her work. Critics started calling her a visionary, a pioneer, a genius of vocal expression. But for Meredith, the titles were never the point. What mattered was the work itself, the act of creating, of discovering new ways to give sound to the human experience. And so, she kept going. Piece after piece, performance after performance, she built a body of work unlike any other. A body of work that seemed less like a career and more like a lifelong meditation. As you listen to this story tonight, imagine her as she must have been in those years, rehearsing late into the evening, her voice echoing in an empty studio, weaving sounds that no one else had imagined before. A lamp glows softly in the corner. Outside, the city hums with its restless energy. But inside, in that room, something timeless is happening. A woman is listening to the deepest parts of herself, and in doing so, she is teaching us how to listen too. And this is how the pieces of her life began to form, a mosaic of sound, silence, movement, and vision. Pieces that, when put together, reveal not just the portrait of an artist, but the story of a human being who dared to follow the voice within. There comes a moment in every artist's life when the search deepens. The curiosity that once felt like play becomes something more sacred, more urgent. For Meredith Monk, that moment came as her career blossomed in the late 1970s and 80s. She had already established herself as a daring performer, someone unafraid of breaking the rules. But now, she began to ask larger questions. What does it mean to be human? What lies beneath the surface of words and gestures? How can art touch the invisible? Her music started to reflect these questions. If her early works were bold experiments, her later works became meditations. She drew inspiration from rituals, from ancient traditions, from the sense that sound itself was a bridge between the material and the spiritual. Listening to her compositions, you might sometimes feel as though you are hearing echoes of prayers, chants, or ceremonies that belong to no one culture yet speak to all cultures at once. One of her landmark pieces, Dolmen Music, 1981, captures this perfectly. Imagine 6 singers on a stage, their voices weaving together in strange, haunting harmonies. They don't sing in English or in any known language. Instead, they create a tapestry of syllables and sounds, rising and falling, overlapping and separating, until it feels like you are listening to the memory of a people long forgotten. The piece moves slowly, patiently, like the shifting of stones under moonlight. By the end, the audience feels as if they have been transported to some ancient place where sound itself is sacred. It is no wonder that people began to describe her work as both spiritual and timeless. For Meredith, the voice was not just an instrument of performance, it was a vessel of the soul. She often said that music could bypass the mind and go straight to the heart. And indeed, to listen to her is to feel something stir inside you that you cannot explain. At the same time, her art was not only about sound. She continued to blend movement, theater, and imagery into her performances. Her Peace Book of Days, 1988, is a perfect example. It is both a film and a performance, weaving together medieval imagery with modern questions. In it, she explores the idea of plague and healing, of fear and hope, themes that resonate as much today as they did in centuries past. Watching it is like being in a dream where history and the present meet, where the voices of the past whisper to the ears of the living. This was Meredith's genius, her ability to step outside of time. She was not trying to be modern, nor was she trying to be traditional. She was simply trying to be true to the eternal. And that truth, in turn, made her music always relevant, always alive, no matter when or where it was performed. But let us not forget, beneath all the grandeur, Meredith remained deeply human. She was not some distant, untouchable figure. She was a woman who lived in New York, who rehearsed in small studios, who faced the same challenges of daily life as anyone else. The difference was that she carried within her a commitment to listen closely, to listen to the spaces between sounds, to the silence behind the noise, to the hidden rhythms of existence. And perhaps that is what makes her music so perfect for the night, for these quiet hours when the world is still. When you listen to her voice then, it feels almost like a companion, not loud, not demanding, but gentle, like someone walking beside you through the dark, reminding you that even silence can be full of meaning. By the 1990s, her influence had begun to spread far beyond the experimental art world. Composers, singers, dancers, filmmakers, all kinds of artists began to draw inspiration from her. Some studied directly with her, joining her ensemble and learning her unique approach to the voice. Others simply carried her spirit into their own work, creating art that echoed her courage to step outside the known. And yet, despite recognition, despite awards and fellowships and invitations to perform worldwide, Meredith remained humble. She did not chase celebrity or fame. She did not seek to be the face of a movement. She simply kept working, piece by piece, as if guided by something larger than herself. This is perhaps one of the most inspiring parts of her story, that her life was never about the spotlight. It was about the process, the daily act of listening, experimenting, creating. That kind of devotion requires patience. It requires trust. And it requires a belief that art, at its deepest level, is not about success or failure, but about truth. Imagine her again in her studio. The floor is bare. The walls echo faintly. She stands in the center, eyes closed. A sound begins, low, trembling, almost like a hum. She repeats it, shapes it, stretches it, until it grows into something larger. Soon another voice joins, then another, and the room fills with sound that feels both intimate and cosmic. This is how her pieces are born. Not from theory or calculation, but from the courage to listen and to trust. As you let these images settle in your mind, notice how her story itself begins to feel like a lullaby. Not a simple lullaby that sends you quickly to sleep, but a deeper one. A lullaby that comforts by reminding you that art, at its best, is a companion for life. Meredith Monk has often been called a visionary, and perhaps she is. But more than that, she is a reminder. a reminder that each of us carries within our voice, our breath, our body, a vast universe of expression waiting to be heard. And so, as we move further into her journey, remember this: the story of Meredith Monk is not only the story of an artist, it is also an invitation to listen more deeply to your own life, to the silences, to the spaces between words, to the music that might already be there waiting. By the time the 1990s gave way to the new millennium, Meredith Monk had become something rare. Not just an artist, but a presence. To attend her performances was not merely to watch or listen, it was to enter her world. A world where silence was never empty, where sound carried history, and where every gesture seemed to open a doorway into something unseen. The world, at last, had caught up with her. Institutions that once looked at her as too experimental now celebrated her as a pioneer. She began receiving major awards: the MacArthur Genius Grant, the National Medal of Arts, commissions from leading orchestras and opera houses. Suddenly, the woman who had once performed in small lofts for audiences of 20 was being honored as one of the greatest living artists of her time. But here's the beauty: success did not change her essence. Fame did not polish away the edges of her curiosity. Even in her 60s and 70s, she remained a seeker, a listener, a student of life. Her works from these years reflect a deepening of her spiritual concerns. They ask questions not just about art, but about mortality, about what remains when the body ages, when time itself begins to weigh more heavily. One of her later masterpieces, Impermanence, 2008, is a meditation on loss and change. It was inspired by the death of close friends, and by the awareness that nothing lasts forever. Not joy, not sorrow, not even life itself. And yet, rather than being mournful, the piece carries a kind of tender acceptance. Voices rise and fall like waves, patterns repeat and then vanish, reminding us that beauty exists precisely because it is fleeting. Imagine listening to it late at night, the lights low, your breathing slow, the voices echo, intertwine, and dissolve, until you feel both the sadness of endings and the peace of letting go. It is art that doesn't deny mortality, but embraces it, transforming fear into wisdom. In these later years, Meredith's face itself seemed to carry the same qualities as her music. Her eyes, sharp yet kind, her smile quiet but knowing. She looked like someone who had traveled deep into the landscapes of sound and returned with treasures to share. To see her perform was to witness not only a singer, but a sage. Yet, despite all the depth, she never lost her playfulness. In rehearsals, she was known to laugh, to experiment, to keep the spirit of childlike curiosity alive. For her, art was never about presenting a polished monument. It was about exploration, about staying open, about remaining willing to be surprised by the voice. And perhaps that is why her work continues to feel so fresh, even after decades. She did not cling to formulas. She did not repeat herself endlessly. Instead, she treated each new piece as a question. What can the voice do here? What story can movement tell now? What silence is waiting to be heard? In 2015, she created On Behalf of Nature, a work that speaks to our relationship with the environment. At a time when the world was waking up to the urgency of climate change, Meredith's piece reminded audiences that art can be a form of prayer, a call to awareness. Without preaching or slogans, she invited listeners into a sonic landscape where the natural world was not separate from us, but part of us. The voices in the piece rise and fall like wind, like water, like creatures moving through unseen forests. To hear it is to remember that we, too, are nature. Even as she grew older, her performances carried a kind of physical grace. She might not leap across the stage the way she once did, but every gesture, every turn of the head, every sweep of the hand was filled with intention. In her stillness, there was power. In her restraint, there was clarity. And always, there was the voice. That voice, which had carried her since childhood, remained her truest companion. It was as if her voice had aged alongside her, gathering textures, colors, and shadows that only time could bring. Listening to her in these years, you could hear not only the sound of the present moment, but the echoes of a lifetime of exploration. Recognition continued to flow. She was celebrated at Lincoln Center, honored by the Kennedy Center, her works performed by major ensembles across the world. Younger generations of artists began to cite her as an influence, weaving her techniques into their own creations. Her once radical approach to the voice had become a foundation for others. And yet, Meredith herself never seemed to claim ownership. She often said that her music felt as though it came through her, rather than from her, as if she were simply a channel, a vessel for something larger. This humility made her work shine even brighter. Think of her, now in her 80s, still rehearsing, still creating, still listening. Imagine her sitting in a quiet room, a notebook on the table, a recorder in her hand. She hums a phrase softly, repeats it, shifts it slightly. She smiles, as if hearing something for the first time, even after all these years. That is the secret of Meredith Monk. She never stopped being amazed. For us, her listeners, this is a gift. Because through her amazement, we, too, can be amazed. Through her voice, we, too, can rediscover the wonder that hides in simple things, the sound of breath, the rhythm of footsteps, the silence between words. And so, as we move deeper into this story, remember that Meredith's legacy is not only measured in awards or performances. It is measured in the way her work touches lives, quietly, deeply, across generations. It is measured in the way her voice continues to echo in the hearts of those who hear it, long after the performance ends. This is what it means to be a living legend, not to stand above others, but to remind us of the sacredness already within us. When we listen to Meredith Monk's voice, it doesn't just sound like music. It feels like medicine, not the kind you swallow, not the kind prescribed in bottles, but a medicine older than science, one made of breath, vibration, and the invisible threads that connect us to one another. Meredith has often said that the human voice is the original instrument. Long before flutes were carved from bone or drums stretched from skin, the voice was already here, carrying lullabies, chants, cries of sorrow, songs of joy. To her, the voice holds within it the memory of humanity itself. And by unlocking its full range, not just the pretty, polished parts, but the raw, unguarded sounds, we reconnect with something deeply healing. Think of it this way: when a baby cries, the sound is not trained or controlled, yet it communicates everything. When a group hums together, the vibrations pass between bodies, and a sense of calm spreads. When someone laughs, the sound can be contagious, lifting the spirits of everyone nearby. Meredith understood this instinctively, and she built her art around it. In the quiet of night, her music can feel like a companion for the soul, a series of tones rising and falling like waves, pulling you gently into a rhythm older than words. Sometimes, it feels as if her voice is not only outside you, but inside you, echoing in the chambers of your own breath, reminding you that you, too, carry music within. Her students and collaborators often speak about this quality. Working with her is not only about learning new techniques, it is about learning to listen, to trust, to open oneself. She teaches them that the cracks in the voice, the moments of fragility, are not flaws but doorways. That in the brokenness lies beauty, and in the beauty lies healing. This is why her influence has spread far beyond the experimental art world. Therapists, spiritual teachers, and even doctors have turned to her recordings and methods, exploring how sound can ease anxiety, quiet the mind, and reconnect people with their inner selves. In this way, Meredith's work blurs the line between art and medicine, performance and prayer. But Meredith never framed her work as therapy. She never said, "I am healing you." Instead, she allowed the art itself to do the work. She simply offered her voice, her movement, her presence, and in that offering, audiences found whatever they needed. Some found comfort, some found clarity, some simply found a space to rest. Imagine yourself now, lying in bed, the room dim, the world outside hushed. You press play on one of her pieces. The first sound enters softly, almost like a whisper, then grows, circling, layering, echoing. At first, your mind might resist, what is this? Where are the words? But soon, you stop asking. You breathe, you drift, and the music carries you, not to sleep just yet, but to a threshold between waking and dreaming. That is the space Meredith creates. Her philosophy also carried into her way of living. She believed that art and life were not separate. The discipline of rehearsing, of listening, of staying open, was not only for the stage, it was for daily existence. She often described art as a spiritual practice, something that trains us to be present, to be mindful, to be fully alive in the moment. You can see this in the way she approaches silence. For many of us, silence feels uncomfortable, something to be filled quickly with chatter or noise. But Meredith treated silence like a sacred partner. She once said that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of everything else. In her works, the pauses are just as important as the notes. They are spaces for the audience to breathe, to listen inwardly, to feel the resonance of what has just been sung. Younger generations of artists have learned from this. Many singers and performers today acknowledge that without Meredith Monk, they might never have discovered the full possibilities of their voices. Some carry her techniques into experimental music, others into film, others into meditation practices. Her influence has spread quietly but powerfully, like ripples in a pond. And yet, she never claimed to be a teacher in the traditional sense. She did not create a fixed method or style. Instead, she encouraged each person to find their own voice, their own path. Trust what comes through you, she would say. Don't try to control it too much. Just listen. It is a simple instruction, but also profound. For in listening, truly listening, we discover more than music. We discover ourselves. As Meredith aged, this wisdom only grew stronger. Her voice, weathered by time, gained a depth that was not there in her youth. It was as if every performance now carried the weight of a life lived fully, a life of devotion to sound and silence. Listening to her sing in her later years is like listening to a tree that has stood through storms, its bark rough but its roots deep. The strength is quiet, but undeniable. For audiences, her presence became more than entertainment. It became a kind of sanctuary, a space to step away from the noise of the world, to enter a slower rhythm, to feel human again. And perhaps that is her greatest legacy, the reminder that art is not separate from life, but woven into it. That the voice we carry, the breath we take, the silences we share, these are not small things. They are the essence of being alive. So tonight, as this story carries you further into rest, let Meredith's lesson sink in. You, too, have a voice that holds power. You, too, can listen to the silences between your thoughts. You, too, can discover healing in the simple act of breathing and sounding. And in that way, Meredith Monk's story is not only hers, it is ours. As the years passed, Meredith Monk became more than an experimental artist. She became a symbol of what it means to follow one's own path, regardless of convention. By now, her work had touched countless people, students, performers, listeners, each taking something unique from her art. Yet she herself remained remarkably grounded, carrying the same curiosity she had as a child, the same willingness to explore sound, movement, and silence as if discovering them for the first time. In her later years, her reflections on time and memory grew particularly poignant. She often spoke of music as a way to hold on to fleeting moments, to give shape to memories that might otherwise drift away. When she performed, she was not only expressing herself, she was capturing the ephemeral, the delicate passage of experience that slips from our fingers if we are not attentive. Imagine her in a rehearsal room, late afternoon light spilling across worn wooden floors. A small group of singers gathers, echoing her instructions. They do not rush. They breathe. They listen. Meredith steps back, her eyes closed for a moment, feeling the sound not as a director, but as a witness. In this quiet attention, something miraculous happens. The ordinary transforms into something sacred. The rehearsal becomes a meditation, a gentle unfolding of memory into music, of life into sound. Her late works, such as Songs of Ascension and On Behalf of Nature, carry this awareness of impermanence. Voices intertwine, rising and falling like clouds moving across the sky. Silences are pauses to inhale, to reflect, to notice. She teaches us that listening itself is an act of care, an act of presence. Audiences, too, sense this. To witness Meredith perform at this stage in her life is to be reminded that age does not diminish creativity, it deepens it. The layers of experience, joy, loss, curiosity, patience, enrich her work, giving every note a weight and resonance that can only come from a life fully lived. And yet, there is playfulness still. In interviews and rehearsals, she laughs easily, experiments freely, sometimes making sounds that surprise even her ensemble. The childlike wonder from her youth remains alive, a soft current running beneath the depth and gravitas of her later works. Her recognition has been immense. Major orchestras, opera houses, museums, and festivals now honor her as a cultural treasure. Scholars write about her contributions, and young artists study her techniques to understand the power of the human voice in new ways. But for Meredith, these accolades are secondary. What matters is the connection, the unspoken bond between performer and listener, the shared understanding that sound can speak where words fail. Perhaps that is the essence of her legacy, the reminder that art is alive only when it is shared, when it moves from one heart to another, when it lingers in the spaces between notes, between breaths, between moments. And so, as you lie here, readying yourself for sleep, imagine Meredith's world around you. The dim glow of a stage light, the soft resonance of voices, the delicate pauses that let your own thoughts and feelings surface. In this quiet, you may feel a shift, a loosening of tension, a gentle opening of the mind, a subtle invitation to dream. Her story, like her music, is a mosaic of pieces, small fragments of experience, experimentation, observation, and care. Each piece alone is remarkable. Together, they form a picture of an extraordinary life devoted to listening, creating, and connecting. And perhaps that is the quiet lesson her life offers, that creativity, courage, and attentiveness to the present can transform not only the world around us, but the world within us. That the music of a single voice, when fully expressed, can carry us into places we might never have imagined. So as your breathing slows and your eyelids grow heavy, let the gentle echo of her voice stay with you. Let it drift through your mind like a soft river, carrying away the noise of the day, and leaving in its place a space of calm, a space of wonder, a space where dreams can begin. For in the story of Meredith Monk, and in the story of her life's work, there is a reminder. The journey of listening, of observing, of creating, is endless, and it can be as comforting as it is inspiring. Close your eyes now. Hear the echoes of her voice. Feel the subtle vibrations in your chest, your throat, your ears. Let them guide you into a deep, gentle sleep. Even as Meredith entered her later years, her curiosity never waned. Every new composition, every performance, every rehearsal was a discovery. She approached sound not as something fixed or final, but as something fluid, alive, waiting to reveal itself. For her, age did not signal an ending. It was simply another layer of richness, another depth to explore. Her final projects reflect this beautifully. Works such as Songs of Ascension and On Behalf of Nature reveal a deep awareness of the cycles of life, the impermanence of all things, and the quiet power of presence. She often said that the voice can carry what the eyes cannot see, the invisible landscapes of memory, hope, and emotion. And in listening to these works, audiences feel that invisible landscape unfolding around them. Imagine a performance late in the evening, the theater dim except for a soft wash of light. Meredith's voice begins softly, almost like a whisper. One by one, the ensemble joins, their voices rising and falling in intricate patterns. The sounds overlap and separate, like leaves drifting on a gentle stream. And in this delicate, living web of sound, listeners find themselves carried, not by force, but by invitation. She frequently explored themes of memory and mortality in these later works. It is not a morbid exploration, but a celebration of the life that is passing, and the life that remains. Her compositions create a space where the audience can reflect on their own experiences, letting the music guide them through the hidden corridors of the heart. Each note is a step, each silence a breath, each pause a gentle reminder that we are alive, even as time moves quietly onward. Her late career collaborations extended her influence to younger generations of artists. Singers, composers, dancers, and even filmmakers sought her insight. But Meredith did not lecture or command. Instead, she listened, observed, and encouraged. She helped them discover their own voices, often by simply creating a space for experimentation. It was a subtle form of mentorship, less about instruction and more about awakening curiosity. And this is why her story resonates so well at bedtime. There is no urgency in her work, no pressure to perform or achieve. There is only presence, awareness, and gentle exploration. Her compositions remind us that creativity is not a race, that listening deeply to oneself and to the world around us is a practice of care, of patience, and of love. Her influence is profound, yet quietly spread. Audiences leave her performances changed, often without being able to explain why. Perhaps it is the way she inhabits time differently, how she structures sound and silence like breathing, teaching us, softly, indirectly, how to inhabit our own time more fully. Even outside the theater, her voice and philosophy inspire. Music therapists, educators, and meditation teachers turn to her works for guidance. People use her recordings to unwind, to reflect, to meditate, and to find peace at the close of the day. Her artistry has become a bridge between the aesthetic and the therapeutic, between listening for pleasure and listening for understanding. And in this, we see one of Meredith Monk's most remarkable gifts. She transforms ordinary listening into something sacred. She reminds us that even the simplest act of paying attention to a note, a phrase, a silence can reconnect us with ourselves, with others, and with the vast, invisible threads that weave our lives together. As the night deepens, imagine her voice once more, delicate yet firm, rising and falling in rhythms that echo your own heartbeat. Imagine the space of the theater, empty but alive with sound. Imagine that this sound, like a soft river, carries away the stress of the day, leaving calm, clarity, and a gentle sense of wonder. Her final projects, then, are more than compositions. They are invitations to listen, to breathe, to be present, to honor the fleeting beauty of each moment. They are reminders that life, like music, is a collection of pieces, some loud, some soft, some surprising, some serene. And, in this mosaic, every note, every pause, every breath matters. And so, as you lie quietly in your bed, let Meredith Monk's story drift into your consciousness. Let her dedication to sound, silence, and exploration inspire a similar attentiveness in your own life. Let the echoes of her voice carry you gently towards sleep, where imagination and memory intertwine, and where dreams can take root like seeds in soft soil. In this quiet, you may notice something remarkable, that art is not only around us but within us. That even in the stillness of night, the voice, the breath, the subtle movements of thought and feeling, are music waiting to be heard. Meredith Monk teaches us that by simply paying attention, we are participants in this music, co-creators of its gentle, unfolding rhythm. And now, as the night deepens, we arrive at the final pieces of Meredith Monk's story. After decades of exploration, creation, and quiet revolution, she has left the world something extraordinary. Not only a body of work but a way of listening, a way of being present, and a reminder of the extraordinary in the everyday. Her influence stretches far beyond the walls of theaters and concert halls. Composers, dancers, filmmakers, and performers carry her spirit forward. Music therapists, educators, and meditators turn to her recordings for guidance, peace, and insight. Even now, young listeners discover her works for the first time, opening their minds to the possibilities of sound, movement, and silence. In every note, in every pause, her presence lingers. Perhaps what makes her legacy most profound is that it is subtle. It does not demand attention with flash or spectacle. Instead, it invites, encourages, and nurtures. Her work reminds us that patience and curiosity are themselves acts of courage, that listening deeply is a form of love, and that every voice, including our own, carries the power to heal, to connect, and to transform. Imagine, for a moment, the soft glow of a studio late at night. Meredith sits, eyes closed, listening to the hum of her own voice, feeling the vibrations of sound ripple through the air. Around her, the echoes of decades of performance mingle with the silence of the present moment. This is the essence of her work, an embrace of life's fleeting beauty, a reverence for sound and silence, a gentle invitation to step into the quiet magic of being alive. And as we close this story, let us carry one final lesson: that life itself is a mosaic composed of pieces, some joyful, some challenging, some quiet, some bold. Meredith Monk's life reminds us to approach these pieces with curiosity, with courage, and with attention, to listen deeply, to breathe fully, and to honor each moment as it comes. So, as your eyelids grow heavy and your mind begins to drift, let the echoes of her voice stay with you. Feel it ripple through your chest, linger in your ears, and rest softly around your thoughts. Let it guide you into a dream space where imagination floats freely, where memories intertwine gently, and where the quiet music of life can be felt fully, without words. Tonight, Meredith Monk's story is more than a story. It is a lullaby not of simple notes, but of courage, creativity, presence, and the enduring power of listening. Close your eyes now, breathe slowly, and let her gentle, timeless music carry you into rest, into peace, and into dreams that feel as expansive and mysterious as her life's work itself. Good night.